Okay, I got a little story here for you guys. This was something that happened to my pickup truck. This is a 2007 F-150 I've owned since 2009. And in June 2017, without warning, I went out there to get in it and I turned the key and I got nothing. And so that was really disappointing. I got under the hood and I went to I should see reference voltage with my meter, and I found 9.5 volts, and I immediately went looking for some sort of ground problem, and this is what I found. Some critter had been under there and he had chewed here. He had chewed this wire completely in two. It's supposed to connect to here, and he had chewed this wire off, and he chewed that hose. And so the hose didn't cause the no start, but ground 102 and ground 103 are both very important grounds on this 07 F-150 4.2. Okay, and so you can see where they go. Both sets of those grounds, this one feeds a whole passel of PCM pins, 67, 68, 69, and 70, and then pin 66 is fed with case ground. So I had no ground of any kind. That's why when I should have been reading 5 volts on my reference voltage wires, I was reading 9.6 or something like that. And obviously, since it has the passive anti-theft system, you know, that was all offline and so on and so forth. So I went to work fixing this damage. I had to take the battery and the battery box out in order to make it happen. Didn't give any real details on that. And the truck was fixed. Outstanding performance. Sounds like a really short story, doesn't it? Well, it gets better. Round 2, September 2019. Now, I had put a pack of rat poison under there. I noticed the pack of rat poison was empty. I ran out of something like that to eat, so they went back to work on my copper. This was my repair job with my little white piece of heat shrink, and see, that was a black wire with a white stripe. I didn't have any black wire with a white stripe, or I would have probably put black wire with a white stripe back in there. But I did have a roll of blue wire, so I soldered it and heat shrinked and ran the thing over there and tried to pull it back out of the way. Never failed to start because there was one strand of copper wire hanging on both sides, and that's really all it needed for such a tiny little whisper of a ground as that, even though it was feeding several PCM pins. Alright, so little story. This tool right here, I actually made that out of one of them old silly hose clamps like everybody hated. But you can take a piece of 1/8 welding rod or coat hanger or whatever, bend it into a horseshoe shape, and put you an alligator clip on each end. You just about got to solder it on there with a torch. And this will hold your wire in place while you're soldering it, and it acts sort of like a heat sink so that the heat doesn't travel down the wire and melt your tubing, your shrink tubing. Alright, so this also holds this right there really neat, so when you solder it, it makes a really nice neat solder. You could twist it together and make a big bump there and all that kind of stuff, but anyway, this is my finished product over here, and I got that hooked up, and I said, well, we need to try to do what we can to prevent this from happening again. And so what I did was, inside my split loom, I put some rat poison, just filled the whole thing up with those little rat poison pellets like the Bugman leaves. You could even see them all the way down here by the that looks kind of like wire corrosion, but it's actually those little rat poison pellets, where I dumped them in this end and let them run all the way down and to where they were showing right there. So if that little knothead starts trying to chew on that loom, he's going to have to get through some rat poison before he gets to that wire. I'm not saying he won't do it again. I don't know if it's squirrels or rats. I haven't found any droppings of any kind under there, but you don't usually find squirrel droppings anyway. Rats are more likely to leave droppings. Alright, I decided I wanted to clean my positive battery terminal because I had a little bit of corrosion starting to show up, not very much. You let that corrosion get away from you, it starts to eat away your battery terminal, and then you got to put another battery terminal in. Mine was still in good shape, but I was going to stop it here and now. And so these stainless steel brushes made by this company here, IPA tools, they got all kinds of tools. This is just one, and these brushes are all different diameters. And so I looked around in that little pack of brushes I had, and I found one that was plenty big enough to clean the battery terminals. And I put it on the drill. I put that thing on the drill, run that thing down through there, and just polish that battery terminal where it looked like brand new. This is the battery box here I had already put back on. Alright. Then I like to use this, the old Motorcraft number for this used to be WA10. It was dielectric grease. And a lot of the times what you're going to find out is this joint between where this lead comes out of this battery and that plastic, that weeps up through there, that acid does, and it begins to make those deposits. Well, I found out when I was working at the Ford dealership, you know, 20-something years ago, that if I smeared a lot of this silicone dielectric grease just around the base, don't get it on the up on here, you're going to have some issues. If the battery terminal ain't all that great, it'll try to jump off of there, you know, squish off when you're tightening it because it's a tapered lug. Anyway, I put some of that stuff around there. Then I put the battery terminal back on it, and I used some silicone spray to spray on the terminal after I tightened it up. And so that will provide a barrier to mitigate some of that battery terminal corrosion. Alright, so I went ahead and got this thing fixed again. There's my little, slightly less than professional looking, but it's my truck, so who cares. I taped up this big terminal they had chewed, this big wire going back to the junction box they had chewed on. And I took care of that again. But that's round number 2. I had to fix that truck twice from critters biting on the wires. And I don't know how many times I've seen critters eat on wires. There was a dog one time that chewed the wire harness, a huge wire harness under a Ford truck, all the way in two. That harness was as big as your wrist under that truck, and he chewed it in two places. And it was just hanging across the frame. We had to replace that whole wire harness because there was no good way to fix that many different wires. And he chewed some hoses too. Cost that man $900 and something, and it wasn't even his dog that ate the wires. And so anyway, that's the end of my story. It's not a very long story, but I hope you enjoyed it.